everyone, and welcome back to Art Uprising, the show where we talk about how art and politics overlap. Today, I'm joined by Rob Voerman, a multimedia artist from the Netherlands, whose work has been shown internationally, including the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the UCLA Hammer Museum in Los Angeles, General Foundation in Vienna, and many others. I first discovered his work at the Museum der Moderne in Salzburg, visiting his exhibition Entropic Empire, an exhibition that really stayed with me. His work moves between utopia and dystopia, and it shows how art isn't something we just consume, but something that reflects society and isn't afraid to confront it. Hi, Rob.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, and thank you so much for doing this today.
You're welcome.
How are you feeling today?
Good, yeah. I'm ready.
I'm happy to hear. So, let's start with the basics. How did your relationship with art begin?
Well, I didn't grow up in a really artistic family. We didn't go to museums, but I got interested in drawing. I found a book with old masters, which I copied, drawings from Michelangelo to Da Vinci. And I also have an ancestor who painted. You can see the painting in the back. I acquired one a couple of years ago. And he is really famous for painting clouds and rivers and cows. And here's a little book of him.
Nice.
So I was kind of fascinated by him. And therefore, I also went into the fields to start drawing cows. That's how it started.
Were you inspired by the Netherlands and the scenery there?
I was inspired by his work, actually, and I really liked the beds of the river where I grew up, the river banks and the cows and the clouds. So I was inspired by that.
Cool. And how did you decide that you're going to pursue art as a profession?
Was a bit of a long process, though. I first studied landscape and garden architecture. For a long time, I didn't know what to do. I liked gardening as a child, working with plants and drawing. So it was 1 and 1 is 2. It was landscape and garden architecture. But at 1 year, I decided to skip, to change, to really pursue art. So I went to the art academy, first with the idea of becoming graphic designer or illustrator. It was a bit like a half decision because I really wanted to pursue art, but I thought, well, this is something I could at least explain to my parents, you can sort of still earn your money with graphic design. But then in the first year, all teachers said, I should go into art. I first did 2 years ceramics, and then I really skipped to sculpture.
Okay, I think for somebody who's seen your work, I think it's really apparent how your relationship with architecture and also gardening, the nature in general.
Yeah. Architecture really came into my work maybe 4 or 5 years after I graduated. And it somehow unconsciously when it came into my work, and because I started building sculptures, and then it became sculptures where you could go inside. First one was really a bit like a shelter with a mattress inside. You could sleep in it, and then they became bigger and more complicated, and somehow I moved towards architecture, really, and also nature. Has always been important to me. I was really concerned with the destruction of nature also as a teenager. I was 16 when I wrote a letter to the Secretary General of the United Nations, urging them to do more about cutting down the rainforest. So I got a big report back from them. I still have it, and a letter see, don't worry, we're on top of it, and so don't worry. That was 42 years ago. No, I don't know how long ago. I was 16, and so I was also working in nature, like doing some volunteer work. And yeah, somehow when my work matured, developed, it also came back into my work. I was felt free enough to allow it into the work. So I did a couple of projects which made a relation between nature and economy, etc. Yeah.
I would like to know more about your creative process, because as you mentioned yourself just now, your art has a wide range. I know it ranges from photographs to sculptures and walk-in installations. Why do you choose each medium, and how do you approach working with them?
Sometimes it's about the question to me, to exhibit, for example, to exhibit in a large biennial or something. It's more logical for me to build a larger installation. Abroad, I do that. I don't hardly bring anything. For example, in China and Japan, I worked, and then I just bring a glass cutter and I get all the materials there. I work together with local people, but sometimes a certain idea is more suitable, for example, for photography. If I really want to make scenery of a city or a big building with an environment, you can better do it in miniature and then photograph it. So you have really like a big world you're kind of looking into. And sometimes an idea is also more suitable for more tactile work, like a sculpture. And sometimes certain ideas I work out both in photography, sculpture, printmaking, because I'm just kind of curious how it would look like, the concept, the idea in a photography, photographic work, or in another way. So, and I also like exhibitions that have a bit more, that are a bit more layered. Uh, so that you really step into a world with really small works where you really have to watch carefully, but then also bigger works which have more physical presence, and sometimes that you can really walk into an installation. Yeah, I sometimes feel like, if you just an exhibition with painting, for me it's a bit boring, I find it
I
more interesting to really step into a world. Yeah.
I feel by you incorporating all those elements in different mediums, you create a little world, kinda.
Yeah, 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 I do that. Yeah. And then it's really good if you have very smaller works, bigger works, that you see also bigger ways of perception.
And what kind of materials are you using?
I use all kinds of materials, cardboard, colored glass, plexiglass. But if it's outside, then it has to be other materials like aluminium or steel, and of course photography, printmaking, etc.
And again, it depends on the idea.
Yeah, it depends on the idea. If it's inside a museum, then cardboard would be, you can kind of really fill a space, and it can grow through the exhibition space. So that's inside a museum. That's for me a very interesting option. And of course, when it's outside, you really have things you have to think about, of like vandalism, for example. If it's really standing in public space, it's really a battle between, you have to be, a strategy how to make sure it's not getting destroyed.
So time and place is important.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, exactly.
I wanted to tell you that one of the reasons that your exhibition stayed with me was its engagement with themes such as climate change, urban planning, propaganda, new media, all of them very political and societal themes.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, when and how did you start integrating political or social themes into your work?
I think that was about maybe 15 years ago. I started making installations where people can go in. At first, they were like a place for contemplation, or sometimes a bar was integrated. But then after like the fifth installation or so, I thought, it's getting for me a bit boring, and I'm and too predictable. And I thought, well, I'm also very engaged in what's happening in the world with certain themes, and why not make a place where people can gather, where you can tackle a certain theme with discussions or performances. Because I also noticed that people really feel comfortable in my works. You know, they feel kind of secure, and so I thought, why not organize more of these gatherings? And then it grew and grew and grew. And for example, with photography, it started with a photograph that two photographs that were really like non-political, but really for me aesthetically interesting. And after a while, I thought, well, why not focus on building places or situations that deal with power, like economical power, information, military power, and build a model of a certain building or place that has a very political function or related to power. So I decided to start with that. So I made a big model in the beginning of the United Nations headquarters in New York, and really transformed it, and then say something about how power works, how power could work, or in a very poetic way also. Currently, I'm working on a large model of Mar-a-Lago, the house of Donald Trump in Miami, and that his building is completely trashed and burned out, and I build a media center in it now, and then that will also be a model, but also some photo works or lightbox works will come out of it.
I can't wait to see it. Now that you mentioned New York, I know that you were supposed to join an art residency there in 2001, but then
Yeah.
9/11 happened, and that never happened, the art residency.
Yeah.
And, I was wondering, how did this impact you and your art?
Well, the fact that I didn't do the residency didn't have so much impact on me, although I made a work about it. It's called Worldviews, big print. But somehow 9/11 did impact my work in another way, because after 9/11, explosions started to appear in my work, but explosions that are kind of materialized into steel and red glass, or wood or red glass. So you saw these like big explosions coming out of the tower, and somehow, I don't know how it works in my head, but somehow triggered me to make explosions in my work and transform something which kind of gruesome into something really beautiful, like really majestic domes out of glass and steel, etc. But somehow disasters also trigger me to transform it in another way. For example, nowadays also some icebergs also appear in my works, which are kind of big buildings appearing inside a city or something.
I see that your work is heavily influenced by what is happening in the world.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask, how does the current political situation in the Netherlands, the United States, in Europe, in the world in general, how does this influence your art?
Very much so, yeah, yeah, and you see it also in certain works, installations in the exhibition. For example, the Republic is very political work, and also the hanging installation. It's about how the world became connected, how geopolitics work or could work. So yeah, it's really it influenced me a lot, and I also follow it a lot. What is happening through podcasts and yeah.
Later, I will ask you in more detail about the Republic and Constellation 2 and 3 because you can really
Yeah.
see how your work critiques society. And I was also wondering if the fact that your work offers a tactile critique of major political crisis, is this just an expression of your personal impulse to communicate and make sense of the world? Or do you feel that as an artist you have a responsibility to society?
Well, first of all, it's a expression of my how I pursue it. What's happening now. I'm not an artist who say like, for example, police violence is bad. Sometimes works are so flat, and it's almost like a pamphlet. And I want my work to be a bit more layered, that people still have the opportunity to project their own thoughts and ideas on it. But it is an expression from me as an artist. But of course, you want to also change the world a little bit, change the mindset. But I know it's not really possible. I'm not really a powerful person, but you still try.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that's very important to do so.
Yeah.
Let's shift now the focus on to Entropic Empire. As I told you before, seeing your exhibition in Museum der Moderne, the Republic really stood out for me. And I know that you drew inspiration from Plato, and your work is a reference to the allegory of the cave. Your Republic is an allegory about modern media and democracy. Can you walk us a bit through it, describe the artwork a bit?
Well, what you see is a sort of geometrical form of a collage of really insane imagery from internet, which I found on like the edges of internet, like from people that believe in conspiracy theories and even ultra right-wing media with propaganda, fake news, and it's printed on a canvas for light boxes, and that canvas is tacked on a frame of like a wooden frame, and it's kind of hanging over a construction of concrete-looking walls, which are crumbling with graffiti on it, and some of my cardboard installations too. It's kind of a work which kind of shows a bit how fake news, etc., conspiracy theories can really literally crush democracy, can crush a society. Because if you don't have discussions anymore about facts, then democracy can really collapse, and you see it everywhere now. And of course, social media is very, I mean, it's a good thing, but it's also dangerous in a way in that sense.
This is how I interpret it as well, that the shadows that the modern current prisoners are seeing are fake news, propaganda, and yeah, it's like it really stuck with me. It really stuck with me. What about Constellation 2 and 3? Can you walk us a bit through it, describe the artworks as well?
Yeah, that's you see objects, models hanging on blue wires, and all these objects and models are connected with these blue wires. It's really like a almost like a spider web, and each model, each object means something in the world. So, for example, you see a sort of high-rise building with on top of it apartment. Yeah, you could see it as the super rich, like the oligarchs in America, like Musk. They live in a separate world. They look over the world, but they don't have connection with the real world anymore. You see like oil colored glass, like it's about things, you know, oil, yeah, or like materials we need, you know, rare earth. And so everything that kind of connects the powers in the world, which determine like who has the power, how power shifts, but also about ecology. You see some forest-like objects. So I want to make visible in a way how complex the world has become. There's a lot more information. Of course, 100 years ago, you knew that, you know, some certain things depend on each other, but was more regional. And now you have so much information, you know, that if you buy an electric car, it has an effect in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where they, you know, dig up lithium. China is involved there. So you know that if you change one little thing, it has an effect somewhere else in the world. And I wanted to make that really visible. So if you really pull a string, the whole constellation change, and yeah, the whole world changes in a way.
That's the butterfly effect, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
In general, for me, Entropic Empire and the exhibition itself, but also the title of the exhibition, I think summarize the central contradiction of our modern world, radical evolution versus decay. And maybe it's my own interpretation, but in your work, I sense an aftermath of a global cataclysm. Is that how you envision the future of humankind?
Well, art it's a very personal way of making work, and on the other hand, it's also something you say about society, and I think it's maybe there's also a bit in my head, you know. I like darker things. I like sometimes dark music, so it's partially, I think, a very personal thing why you make certain art, and doesn't necessarily say that I'm very negative always. Of course, there are really worrying things, but I can listen to very dark music and really like it. In Germany, there's a saying like "das Grauen genießen," so that's part of it, and part of it is of course that it's worrying what's happening in the world. But it's not pitch dark, my work. You always see light appearing in like a new society appearing. And also I do projects where I try to find new systems. So I made like new, like money related to ecology once, which is a very positive way in a way. You try to, it's a bit difficult to explain. I won't explain it really, but you kind of transform greed into something positive, something constructive. And also worked with indigenous people in Suriname, and also try to, with money, to enforce their, to give them more power in a way, more of a voice. And so a lot of things seem to be dark, but there's a really positive, constructive way also in the world, in the work.
So what I see, what I get is that you highlight the darkness of the world, but you always incorporate a little bit of light into it.
Yeah, and it's maybe not a conscious thing, it's partially also unconscious thing.
Before we wrap up, I'd love to bring back the topic of future, but this time to you personally. And I wanted to ask, are there any new projects you're working with? You mentioned something before, or new exhibitions coming up?
Yeah, in Holland there's a big exhibition in 2 years' time, and projects. I've been to conflict areas a couple of times. I worked in Gaza for 3 times. I wanted to do a big project there but it should happen 2 years ago. But of course, we all know what happened. Because I think it's interesting what art could mean, especially in areas that are hit with conflicts. Last year I've been to Ukraine, eastern Ukraine, and I've been to a city called Izium, which was occupied by the Russians, and I was really touched by the stories of the people there, what happened during the occupation. And I got in contact with director of a tiny museum in Izium, which is really 30 kilometers from the front lines, which is looted and partially destroyed. And my idea is a very complex plan because it has to be about timing, when the war is over, if I can get finances. But my idea is to build like a temporary historical museum there against one of the ruins, and have it function like 2 weeks, that people can bring objects, can bring stories, and work together with a documentary maker and kind of film the whole process of going there, building, having a bit like historical stories about the place, so that it's not a work I just do there, but through this documentary that I can show it in many parts of the world. So that's one of the plans.
So if I understand correctly, you envision the making of a museum with a bottom-up approach and people bring in their own stories.
With my kind of architecture, so that I build it there, and then that it stays there for 2 or 3 weeks, and that people can drink coffee there, and like a meeting point, but also an exhibition place, and that the whole thing is being incorporated into a documentary, so like an art film, so to say.
I think that's super cool, and I think this is something what modern museums are missing, the fact that what you're describing is really interactive and is made by people. So I really wish that your idea is implemented.
Yeah. But it's of course very complicated. You need money for it, and you have to have the right timing when the war is over. And one other thing is that which is kind of a logical step for me, maybe in the coming years I would try to see if I can transform my work into architecture. So to really make a building with my work. So I already started a collaboration with an architect and try to find ways of how to shape these organic forms into architecture. But yeah.
Where would you make this building? I don't know if you can share it with us, but I'm really interested in knowing the answer.
I don't know, where there is an opportunity. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter where, really.
Ideally for you.
Oh, where? Yeah, ideally. Would be nice if I could work with an architect, that an architect makes a building, but that I make a part of the building, which is kind of like against or inside or half inside the building, because you see that a lot in my work, that I kind of use ruins or existing architecture to project or click my work on.
Nice. Rob, this episode is coming to an end. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with us?
No, just enjoy the show if you're there.
I really enjoyed our conversation, and really thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts and your work with us. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, there's one more thing. There's a book came out which is on sale in the museum about my work. Quite a big, thick book, but you can also order it online.
What's the title of it? What's the title of the book?
It's also called Entropic Empire.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So.
Thank you so much for letting us know. And again, thank you so much for the time today.
Yeah, and thank you too.
Of course.
Hey.
And thank you to everybody who's watching.